You're listening to the Snob OS podcast, the podcast for Apple snobs. Hey, this is Nika Montfort, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
Yo, this is Terrence Gaines, aka Brother Tech.
And welcome to the Snob OS show, the show for Apple snobs where we talk all things Apple and then some. Welcome back, everybody, to the latest installment of the Snob OS show. We definitely want to thank you for tuning in each and every week with us. Again, if you want to get a little extra content, watch the show live, get some exclusive content, you can head on over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/snoboscast, to get all of those details. So let's go ahead and jump into this week's show. We're going to kick it off with the Lowdown, where we talk all things Apple. And honestly, this show might be an all Apple show. Why? Because the Let Loose Apple event was held yesterday. If you're listening to this show live, if you're listening to it recorded, it was on Tuesday, where Apple announced the latest and greatest in the iPad range of products. We've mentioned before that this is the first update in iPads in about over a year. So lots to get into on that. So we'll just go ahead and kick it off. We'll go over the products that were announced. I'm sure by now pretty much everybody knows a lot of the specs. So we're just going to get into some of our thoughts on the products, and we'll go from there. So I have a list of order in our notes, but I'm actually going to go in the order that things were announced. Okay. So Tim Cook jumped out and started with Vision Pro. He was like, hey, don't forget about Vision Pro. And he talked about some of the uses that Vision Pro has been used in outside of the consumer product use cases. He highlighted some medical use cases, some use cases with Porsche, and basically highlighting the enterprise use of the Apple Vision Pro, which I think is likely meant to be the true use behind the Apple Vision Pro, especially with a $3,500 price tag and issues with battery life. So I don't think it was necessarily meant to be one of those devices that you can kind of take outside and just use in your everyday life. But he was like, hey.
Not right now.
Not in this version.
Yeah, eventually they'll get, and maybe in this version, I just think there needs more support. There needs more third-party app developers. And I think Apple was kind of like, this is enterprise, until all the developers hop on board, the popular ones, the streaming services, the games, the productivity apps. Once they start to get third-party developers, then Apple would be like, surprise, Apple Vision Pro was for consumers all along. And it's like, all right, we got it. We see.
And I think they recognize they need to do something with the battery situation because it doesn't have a very long battery life. So I think this first iteration is, their first foray into it. And we've talked about, innovation, new technology, because this is something completely new for Apple, and the way that they are using it and the way that they are promoting it is not necessarily along the same lines as, say, an Oculus, where it's more for gaming. They've introduced this or presented it, more on some of the productivity side. And that's likely because they didn't have some of the, as you mentioned, some of the other big apps on board from jump, so that it could be more of a entertainment type deal. So they kind of went with what they had. So he went through that. Then we got into the new iPad Air. I think that was next. I think the iPad Air was next. And I think the biggest thing with the iPad Air, a new 13-inch iPad Air. And comes in some 4 new colors. And I don't know. I'll get your thoughts on this. What are you thinking now that they have this 13-inch, a full 13-inch iPad Air, and we all know that the MacBook Air, it comes in a 13-inch model. I guess, what are your thoughts on how what the way they presented this new Air, how it really fits into, I guess, usage for people.
Well, they made a um purposely did not mention laptop quality productivity, simply because this may butt up against, the MacBook Airs that are also 13-inch screens. We all know that while full computing on an iPad is getting better, there still are some things that the MacBook does better, specifically apps, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the MacBook, you can download apps from the Mac App Store, but you can also download them from websites, third-party developers, whatever the case may be. Apple has gone a long way with the Mac to say, "Hey, are you sure you trust this app?" And they put all these kind of little guardrails in the way to make
Mm-hmm.
sure if you are downloading an app from the website from a third-party developer, from anybody not Apple, be warned. We told you so if something goes wrong, right?
Right.
With the iPad is still, it's either on the web if the website or third party site or whatever the case may be has a dope web interface, then that'll look very nice on an iPad. If they don't, most websites, if they do have a specific iPad app, they will force you into that mobile app experience, which, if you are doing work, that may be a learning curve that you're just not ready to tackle right now. It's like, I
Mm-hmm.
do this a certain way on my Mac. I expect to do this a certain way on my iPad. That's not the case. I'm not with it. So they still have a little ways to go, but as far as price and as far as size is concerned, they
Mm-hmm.
are kind of butting up with people actually deciding, well, do I really need a MacBook? And they're really going to have somebody explain to them the pros and the cons, because this MacBook Air 13-inch, I think it is, what is it? The 13-inch is $799, and that's for the baseline one. So that's
Mm-hmm.
not if you add the Magic Keyboard, that's like $200. That's not if you add more storage, that can get you up 100, 200, $300. You're up to $1,300, $1,400, which is the price of a 13-inch MacBook Air.
Yeah.
So as far as that's concerned, yeah, it could butt up, but still they're kind of a separate device
Yeah.
for now. For now, like I say, give it another year or two. More third-party developers maybe either adopt the web app interface,
Yeah.
or Apple allows third-party developers to side load apps onto the MacBook Air, similar to how they are eventually going to have to do that on the iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
If Apple lets third-party developers side load, same way you would download an app from the website for a MacBook, if you can kind of do the same thing, air quotes, on a MacBook Air, then you can say, all right, now I really got to make a decision. Can I get a slim, ultra portable MacBook Air, not a MacBook, an iPad Air, or do I go with a traditional laptop?
Yeah. And so a little bit of background, the iPad Air, it of course comes in an 11-inch model and a 13-inch model. 11-inch starting at $599, 13-inch starting at $799 for both those base models. You could actually order those on Tuesday, with them being available on Friday. So by the time this show comes out, you could likely just pop into a store and pick up one if you haven't ordered one already. Again, it has 4 new colors. They're very light, pastel-y, like almost reminds me of like Easter colors.
Mm-hmm.
It has the M2 chip, Touch ID. It has Wi-Fi 6E. It has a liquid retina display. It's compatible, we'll talk a little bit more, with the Apple Pencil Pro, 12 megapixel camera.
The 12 megapixel front camera is also in landscape mode now. If you look at any iPad, if you look at the front facing camera, it's on the side if you lay it on the side, but typically it's in portrait. Now they've turned the camera to where it's in landscape. So if you're using it similar to a laptop style, like in a
Mm-hmm.
keyboard or a folio, that the camera's now front and center versus on the side.
And it does have stage manager. So as you move, the camera kind of tracks you as well. And speaking of, the camera being in landscape, of course, little window where you view the person looking at is in landscape mode. It's all in the horizontal landscape type of feature. So that was iPad Air. Next up, we got to the did we talk about the pencil next? I think the pencil.
Well, as far as the event, I think they did run through the Pro and then went into the
and
pencil.
Then they did the pencil, right?
Yeah.
Because they did the accessories last. Okay, so the biggest part of the event was the announcement of the new iPad Pro. And it comes with this new, what do they call it? XDR, Ultra XDR liquid display. It's super, super thin. And I think, we talked about it before, how folks are going to do their typical bin test, I don't know. Let's see, it's too thin, it breaks. I can't put it in my back pocket. It's not meant to be. But again, the iPad Pro is coming in an 11-inch model and a 13-inch model. Again, similar to kind of what we talked about with the Air as far as the screen size.
Right. So the iPad Pro has in previous generations had a 11-inch and a 12.9 inch.
12.9.
Technically, you can call it 13-inch.
But now you got the full.
Right. But iPad Air is the latest device to add a 13-inch device. With the iPad Pro, you mentioned the display. It is an OLED display, so I guess that's going to get better. I really can't tell, but people say OLED screens are better than whatever the screen is on previous generations. And like
didn't
you mentioned,
say something about a mirror or something? I thought I was trying to find it in my notes.
A tandem, they call it a tandem OLED. So they kind of use the Apple's logo. The lingo was they took two OLED displays and smashed them together so you can get these many more pixels and this many more nits of brightness and yada, yada, yada. I'm not a specs person, as you can tell.
Yeah.
But Apple did kind of take a lot of effort to talk about that. And they talk a lot of effort to, like Nika mentioned, talk about how it's thinner. According to Apple, this is the thinnest Apple product ever. So it's thinner than any iPhone, thinner than all the previous generation iPads. So I am surprised. Like we talked about on the DTNS, I would have thought they would have made the iPad Air the thinnest Apple product ever because it's light and airy. So I'm thinking, okay, they're going to make the right, but actually and you would assume the iPad Pro, since it's got more guts, it's faster, better processor, yada yada yada. You would think that would be a little bit thicker, but it sounds like they did a reverse. The iPad Air is a more thicker device. It's got more bezel space versus the iPad Pro, hardly no bezels at all. And then it's the thinnest device ever. So we'll let Apple decide. I guess they needed to justify the extra cost, but I would assume the Air would be the lightest, thinnest device ever, but I guess that's not the case.
And these devices are starting with, I think, 256 gig is the base model of storage. And then it goes up to 2 terabytes of storage. These start at, I think the 11-inch starts at $999 and the 13-inch starts at basically $1,200.
$1,299.
Oh, it's $1,299. And again, these were both available to order on Tuesday, so you can order them now. And if you're listening to the show when it's published, it's actually out in stores now. Of course, it's coming in its traditional silver and space black. A little bit about the specs. It has, of course, Face ID. It does have that landscape 12 megapixel front camera. I mentioned the Ultra Retina XDR, which is the new OLED screen. 4 new speakers. Of course, you have the 2 different sizes. Again, ProRes. and up to, as I mentioned, the 2 terabyte storage.
But you also mentioned that this is the first Apple device to have the M4 chip. Did you mention that already?
Right. Nope,
Okay.
that's what I was
Okay.
getting to next.
Oh,
The
I jumped in line. My bad. My bad. My
jumped
bad.
a little ahead, but that's okay. The other big thing about the new iPad Pro is that it has a new Apple Silicon chip, which is the M4. So again, the way I see these chips, you can get down into chip size, cores, and transistors and neural engines, all that, stuff. Basically, it's just faster than the previous one. And it gives you the ability, it's allowing all of the things that we mentioned on the iPad to move and process more quickly. You have this OLED display, so you have to be concerned about snap and how, your fingers move and how it responds to your fingers. So all these things allow for the iPad to function as it does. And I do want to mention during the announcement, they talked quite a bit about some of the software that is going to be hugely beneficial to me. It's geared towards creators, whether you are a content creator in the video audio space, because they talked about Final Cut Pro, how you can use multiple cameras and all these things, and Procreate, and all of these fanciful, wonderful things that you can do. And this chip is what's powering it and allowing all of these new, along with the OS, these new programs to really allow you to get the best, usage out of this camera. Out of this device. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to see and to get your opinion on several of the products that they mentioned. Was it Final Cut Camera and the Procreate software? Mm-hmm. How they kept mentioning machine learning powered this, machine learning powered mm-hmm. that. When they were saying that, because previously they haven't really mentioned AI or really too much about machine learning in some of the software that it uses. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I kind of picked up on that. I was like, they are really kind of driving home this machine learning backed software that they're announcing along with this iPad. Mm-hmm. So any thoughts on that?
Oh, the only issue with those is they got to pay for the subscriptions. I don't know about Logic Pro, but the Final Cut Pro, you have to pay either $5 a month or I think $50 a year. I guess that works for people who are mobile, but I look at Logic Pro and I look at Final Cut Pro on a tablet as a accessory to Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro on a MacBook. Mm-hmm. And if you are deep into using those products on a regular, then you've probably already paid the $200-$300 for the full blown, excuse me, the full blown laptop experience. I don't know if I only speak for myself. I'm not also then paying, a subscription or a yearly fee to also use it on my tablet, mm-hmm. But that's just me. There are a lot of professionals who are always on the go. They're at client shoots, they're at, client visits or whatever the case may be, and they mm-hmm. want to pack as light as possible. So maybe that is a benefit. But for those people, they have packed a lot of features into those two applications, specifically making them more touch touch proficient, I guess we'll call it. Mm-hmm. I guess the first instances, some things were touch, but you then had to use to get the full experience, you needed a mouse or use mm-hmm. the trackpad in the Magic Keyboard to actually use more of the functionality. Well, now with these two new updates, they said they rebuilt them from the ground up to take full advantage of the touchscreen. So if you are using Final Cut Pro to edit videos, you're using Logic Pro to do audio, then everything as far as the um, experience can be done via touch. And I'm curious to see how that works because I use Final Cut Pro to, well, we both use Final Cut
Mm-hmm.
Pro to edit and upload and publish the show, right? I'm so bad. I bought a special Logitech mouse that gives me the ability to program it so specifically to the specific use cases that I have for
Mm-hmm.
Final Cut Pro. I am not going to try to, let me, before I say that, I'm so bad to where if I'm like going to do some work away from my desk and I have to take
Mm-hmm.
my MacBook with me, if I don't take that mouse, I'm still kind
You're like,
of
I'm lost in the world.
right.
How do I do this?
Just using the trackpad. So I can imagine trying to then edit or whatever, do my normal process, my normal workflow just via touch. I would be lost
Mm-hmm.
to where I was just like, you know what? I am not trying to learn this process all over again for the few couple times that I may consider doing anything using Final Cut Pro on my iPad. So all around the world to say, for those people who just want a mobile or a more portable experience, I could see them jumping into this and getting everything they need. I'm curious as to how that will work for people who are switching back and forth between Final
Mm-hmm.
Cut Pro and an iPad that's all touch and Final Cut Pro or Logic Pro on a MacBook to where you're using mostly keyboard and mouse.
Yeah. And so that was going to be my next thing. Who do you really think Apple, I won't say made the device for, but who do you think was the target for this Apple event? Because to me, I'll say it seemed it was geared more towards enterprise people because I'm thinking if you are a production company, if you are, entertainment, music, TV, you can give these iPads out to your team if you're on location doing something and you need to kind of whip up something on the fly outside of someone who is like, hey, I'm in the market for a new iPad. They got some new ones. I'll get this. But to me, the whole announcement seemed pretty targeted, and it wasn't, to me, it didn't seem as if it was targeted to your casual user.
Well, I could definitely, again, making this personal, I have a daughter who's my artsy. She's my artsy fartsy kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I could definitely see getting, like spending money to get her an iPad Pro, an Apple Pencil, and like the expensive Magic Keyboard, and that be her main device.
Mm-hmm.
I got her a M1 Mac Mini that she uses the game on. And
Mm-hmm.
that would be the only thing she does with that is to do gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, because she does art, she knows Procreate, which is a super popular. I think they mentioned
They did.
Procreate, yeah, during the event. She's heavy into not heavy. I want her to be more heavy
Mm-hmm.
into digital art. She's a good artist. You know what? Parents always pump up their kids, but just objectively,
Mm-hmm.
speaking, she's talented as far as art is concerned. So
Mm-hmm.
I would want to push her as much as possible, especially as it relates to digital. So I could
Mm-hmm.
see all again, I'm getting long winded here, all the way around the world to say I see Apple pushing this towards students. We're talking
Mm-hmm.
college students, upcoming college students, because like I mentioned, pretty much most of their work is done on computers. The kids know how to see their grades. They know how to talk to their teachers. They know how to sign up for classes. They know how to send emails to the teachers to let them know, if I'm not going to be in the class, if I'm sick, how do I catch up? They know how to do that digitally now. These kids
Mm-hmm.
are on it, right?
Yeah.
So I could see high school, maybe even college student getting them an iPad Pro, spending the money and be done with it. Don't need a laptop. And that's it. There was a
Yeah.
video, Apple did a commercial maybe 3-4 years ago where they had a kid with a cellular iPad and she was going throughout her day. She would go here and she would, draw something. She would go to another spot and kind of FaceTime with her friends. She would pack up the iPad and go to another spot and get some work done. I could see
Mm-hmm.
that being like you mentioned, the audience for an iPad would be these kids and these high schoolers and these college kids, to where all you need is an iPad and enough storage and you can do everything pretty much. I think
Yeah.
that's, in my opinion, that's where I would want Apple to push this, towards the students and these kids who are, super technologically inclined, to where they can work around the pitfalls of maybe not having a full blown desktop experience, because all
Hmm.
they use is apps. So they
Yeah.
don't care whether or not they can figure out their workflow on a laptop. They've been using iPads all day long. So
Yeah.
they'll get the learning curve faster than somebody like me would.
Yeah. And now that you mention it, because I was wondering, I have it, for us to talk about a little bit later, but wondering why we have WWDC next month. Why do this event so close rather than, do it maybe in like how they have done it earlier in like a spring event, maybe March? Why do it now? But honestly, now that you talk about the angle from students, it's graduation time. Kids are graduating from high school, going to
Mm-hmm.
college,
Mm-hmm.
graduating from college. So this may be one of those times where it's like, hey, let's get in on people trying to buy presents and
Right.
gifts for the grad in their life, whether it's from middle school, whether it's from high school to college. So you know what, that kind of makes sense.
And if the rumors are true, it's AI season.
Hmm.
WWDC, we all are expecting Apple to like really leap into this whole AI arms race. And in order for them to do that, they need to make sure they've got products out the door that can support these things, right?
Yeah.
Because of, the way Apple works is everything is on device. All the
Yeah.
security features is on the device. All the protections, all the privacy, all those functionalities, Siri, all that
Hmm.
functionality is done, that processing is done on device. So you can imagine, or you can fortune tell and foreshadow that when they do this whole AI thing, when they announce it, let's just say they announce it next month at WWDC, you can pretty much assume that a lion's share of that work is going to be done on device.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for Apple to launch an iPad Pro with an M4 chip. And it makes sense for them to launch an iPad Air with an M2 chip and
Hmm.
all this extra features and all this CPU processing power,
It's all a
because
setup.
it's going to
It's
need that.
ramping up to something.
It's going to need that for this AI when they launch whatever it's going to do. Because, like you mentioned, they talked about Logic Pro, they talked about um, um, Final Cut Pro, and they
Hmm.
mentioned machine learning, and they mentioned
Yep.
generative AI. So it
Hmm.
makes sense for them to have these devices out the door first. So when they do say, this is our new AI project, they've
Hmm.
already got devices that can support it.
Yep. And speaking on things you can do with the iPad Pro, it was announced post event that the full Apple event was shot on an iPhone. They're thinking it was an iPhone 15, but in addition to it being shot on an iPhone 15, it was also edited on a Mac and on an iPad. So
Mhm.
it's giving you, real world, hey, this
If
is
we
what we
can do it, you can
have.
do it.
And this is what we used to do our event that all of you tuned in to watch. Another thing, Tim Cook had on some kicks. You are the sneakerhead of this duo. He had on some, I think it was
101.
86
Mm-hmm.
Air Maxes that were designed
Mm-hmm.
on the new iPad Air. Even on the shoe itself, it had on the little, what do you call it, the bib, the
Mm-hmm.
tongue of the
Mm-hmm.
shoe,
Mm-hmm.
made on iPad, and it referenced some of the design for us all, based on the swoosh on it was based off of it was inspired by the Apple Pencil. So it just goes to show that all these things that they did in preparation for the event were done with the devices that they were chilling, basically telling you, hey, you should buy this.
Yeah. Now, of course, they've got extra lighting and they've got extra
Yeah.
microphones and they've got extra lenses that attach to the iPhone. So don't go
Yeah.
out here thinking that you're going to be able to shoot a Apple level event family event, on your iPhone and your iPad. Relax. But at the same time, they're
It's gonna look pretty good, but it's not gonna look like this because
well,
this is done professionally.
they're putting their money where their mouth is. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure there have been plenty of um, brands who have shot commercials. They have done things promoting their devices. Like think of an auto manufacturer.
Hmm.
They show especially the thing I hate, right? They show the SUVs
Hmm.
and SUVs going through the mountaintops like they're
Hmm.
really like we like consumers are
I could take
really
this and do that.
right. The reason I need to buy an SUV is because I need to go off road,
Yeah.
do some construction site or whatever the case may be. And the people actually shooting those commercials with their own vehicles, they probably got to the set in like a Range Rover or something, but they're promoting
Yeah.
an Acura, whatever the case may
And
be.
they're professional drivers who are doing this.
Exactly, versus a family, right?
Right.
Apple's like, all right, well, we don't want to say, well, you can do all this fancy shooting and editing on an iPad and
Hmm.
iPhone, and they've got $100,000 cameras that they're recording on, and they've got
Yeah.
this farm of high processing computers to make this
Yeah.
video. There's like, no, we shot it on our products that we are
Hmm.
promoting to you. So, we get a little bit of credit for that.
Yep. So outside of that big hardware, there were some accessories announced. A new Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro 13-inch, and also for the 11-inch as well. So making it a little bit easier to use. The other big announcement in the accessory space, a new Apple Pencil Pro that was launched as well. It has some new gestures, new haptics. So basically, double tap. Of course, you typically have a pencil, you double tap it. They have this thing called a barrel roll. You can squeeze the pencil
Hmm.
and get different functionality as well.
Hmm.
But I think the biggest thing that people are most excited about is now this Apple Pencil Pro will show up in Find My. If
Hmm.
anybody knows anything about the lovely Apple Pencil,
Hmm.
you can lose it very
Hmm.
easily. There are
Hmm.
many times where I've used it and I've put it down and I don't know where I put it.
Hmm.
And it just shows up randomly when I'm looking for something else. I was like, oh, here's the pencil.
Right.
I found it. So a lot of people were really excited, as I am, about the Apple Pencil Pro being in Find My. One of the other things I talked about, a hover uh, feature where basically you can hover the pencil over where you're going and it'll put
Right.
like a dot
Or
to
you can highlight,
indicate.
yeah, you can
Yeah,
highlight things without touching the screen. You can,
yeah,
make selections without actually touching the screen. The barrel roll thing that you mentioned, if you're drawing or writing and you kind of twist the
twist it.
yeah, twist the Apple Pencil, it'll change the orientation slow. Like if you're highlighting something from left to right, but you also want to highlight something from top to down, just twist the pencil and then you can then highlight from up to
Yeah,
down. And then, like you mentioned, it does do haptic feedback, which is important. Like if you are, double tapping to change the different options,
the
or you're
pen
doing
strokes, for instance.
right, or you're squeezing to pull up the also the additional features, you get
Hmm.
haptic feedback when it's doing that. Because there have been times with the Apple Pencil 2 that I have to where
This one,
you double tap, but you really don't know if it's done
if it actually
anything.
did it.
But right, with this haptic feedback, you can definitely get that. In addition to pressure sensitivity and all the other things that it's
Yeah.
had before. What's interesting about the Apple Pencil Pro is it's not all of the features are not compatible with all of the iPads. So if you
Hmm.
have just a regular ninth or 10th generation iPad, if you have just a regular iPad Air, and you decide you want to get an Apple Pencil Pro, be careful because all of those features may not be available, right? So for example, my wife has a ninth generation iPad, so it doesn't have the squared off look of the iPad Air or the iPad Pros. So she can't get the Apple Pencil Pro. And magnetically attach it and charge it to her iPad. In addition to that, none of these features will be available. The double tap, the barrel roll, the haptic feedback, because she doesn't have the iPad Pro, or she doesn't have the new 11-inch or 13-inch iPad Air. Some of those features want to be available. So Apple has 4 pencils. They have the original Apple Pencil, they have the Apple Pencil 2, they have the Apple Pencil USB-C, and now they have the Apple Pencil Pro. So you really have to be careful and really just figure out, okay, which iPad I have, which features do I want, and then let those decide which Apple Pencil you get. You just can't go get any Apple Pencil and just use it. You got to do some figuring out, and Apple has this
some configurations and
yeah, some configurations, right? So they do. Apple has tried to kind of like do a side by side of all the Apple Pencils, and they also on the website give you this ability to actually click and say, find the Apple Pencil that works with your iPad. So you go and select your model, and they've got all the iPads listed. Once you select your model, then it'll tell you which Apple Pencil works best. So you got to be mindful of that. Just don't think you can get an Apple Pencil and all these features are going to be made available to you. You got to pay attention.
And also along those lines, the Apple Pencil Pro, of course, is compatible with the new devices. So you're good. It's good on the Pro, and it's also compatible with the new Air as well. And again, like the other devices, they were available to order on Tuesday. And you could pre-order on Tuesday and available on Friday. The Apple Pencil is $129, I believe.
It is $129, yes.
Yep. And the Magic Keyboard is $349.
Yeah, so that's
for the 13-inch.
And the
I
price
think
has
the
jumped
11-inch.
Yeah,
the 11-inch is $299, and the 13-inch is $349.
And the real quick, the benefit to the new Magic keyboards is the trackpad is bigger, and they have a function keys row. So if you're used to doing the functions to do the brightness, to show the desktop, to do the music controls, to do those different things, there is a function row for that, when before you had to do a combination of pressing function in this and function in that. Now it just has a whole row, just function keys.
Yep. And they did throw in, kind of like, I won't say a throwaway, but just to like, oh yeah, by the way, they did talk about the standard iPad, the non-Air and the non-Pro, to say, hey, they're still there. If you want to get in on that, you can do that as well. So that's pretty much what was announced during the event. I did want to ask you, were you expecting any more products from this event?
Nope.
Because again, this event ran like less than 40 minutes.
Nope. iPads and Apple Pencils, I was kind of hoping they wouldn't. I don't know why, but I was assuming that, well, not assuming. I thought the current lineup as it stands of iPads was enough, because you've got the iPad Pro 12.9 inch, you've got the iPad Pro 11 inch, you've got the iPad Air with the M2 processor. So I think the combination of those three and the newer iPad 9th generation with the new look, it just doesn't have the features. I thought those 4 were just fine, but Apple was like, nope, we're giving you more.
Give me something else.
And again, I think that's because all the new technology they're about to
Software.
Announce, they need to have devices compatible.
Yep. For me, selfishly, because it's something I want, I was hoping to at least maybe see something from the AirPod line. I was hoping, because we haven't had a refresh in the AirPod Maxes since they were first launched. So I was hoping maybe they were going to slide into one more thing, or say, oh yeah, to go along with your new iPad Pro, you can listen to your music while you mix it on GarageBand or whatever you're mixing, whatever audio. So selfishly, I was hoping for a new over-the-ear headphones, because I do want a pair but I was hoping to get a pair of the AirPod Maxes.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so that pretty much covers the products in the event. I did want to get your thoughts on a couple things as it relates to the event itself. Again, this was a pre-recorded, pre-produced production. Since COVID, this has basically been the way of the land for Apple doing its Apple events and any of its keynotes. Since this event was only 35, 40 minutes, were you surprised that they actually did an event and not just, throw the video up on do a press release, basically?
It makes sense for them to do a pre-recorded event because the iPad Air and specifically the iPad Pro is, I guess, Apple's marquee products as far as mobile devices. You think of the iPhones and then you think of the iPad. Now, if they just announced a new iPad, absolutely, throw a press release up. But since they did announce a additional size to the iPad Air and then the new thinner and the OLED and all that stuff for the iPad Pro, it makes sense for them to do an event, but it makes sense now also that it was short.
Yeah, and it's been it seems that some people are happier with the shorter pre-record events. To me, it's one of those things where it's like a divide. I mentioned on DTNS. It's like a divide of basically pre-pandemic events and post-pandemic events. If it was a live in-person event, then sure, let's stream it. Let's put it out there. I appreciate an Apple event. I'm not going to not tune in. But if this was just the video thrown up in a press release, I would have been fine with that as well. It wouldn't have been like one of those things where, oh my gosh, I have to tune in, especially since they move the time up. Typically, these Apple events start about 1 p.m. Eastern and 10 a.m. Pacific. But this particular event, it started at 7 a.m. Pacific and 10 a.m. Eastern, which is a departure from Apple's typical event activity. And Apple is known for, this is how we do things. We're going to stick to it. We're going to keep going with this. And this was definitely a change of pace, having the West Coast folks get up super early for an event.
Yeah, man, get it out of the way, get people on with their day. That's Apple's. I'm assuming that's what
especially
Apple's
since it was less than 40 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Purchases. Are you anticipating purchasing any of the products from the Let Loose event?
No. Well, no. Nope.
Are you sure? Trying to convince
No.
yourself?
Well, I was going to say, like I mentioned, I would be interested in getting my daughter into encouraging her to, go farther in her art journey. Right. I don't know if I'm gonna spend $1,000 to do that. She has a iPad 9th generation and that works for her. Like I said, Procreate works for that. She has the Logitech Crayola stylus, which is like right below the Apple Pencil. Her birthday is coming up in June, so maybe I'll get her the first generation Apple Pencil to where she can take advantage of some of the extra functionality, the pressure sensitivity. Don't sleep on the original Apple Pencil. It has a lot of features and it's expensive still. Right.
Didn't drop in price.
Right. The Apple Pencil USB-C is only $79, which is like the next version up. And then you've got the Apple Pencil 2, which is like $129. And then you've got the Apple Pencil Pro, which is $129 as well. The original Apple Pencil, don't sleep on it. It's got pixel perfect precision. It's got low latency. It's got tilt sensitivity. It's got pressure sensitivity. It doesn't have the ability to magnetically attach to an iPad, so you got to pop the little top off and plug it in to charge it up, which is a bummer. Um, it doesn't have the hover. It doesn't have the barrel roll and the squeeze and the double tap, and it doesn't have Find My. But for a 14-year-old, I really don't care. So all that to say, maybe for her birthday, I'll get her an Apple Pencil and then put her in some Procreate classes. But that is about it. I asked my wife, does she want anything? She's like, she really does not want me to buy her technology for her special days. So that's birthday, that is Mother's Day, Christmas. She'll allow it, but for Mother's Day, don't be getting me stuff you want me to have. Get me stuff
that I want.
Right. So Ixnay on the technology tay for Mother's Day, May. So the answer is no. I currently have a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and I have the current Magic Keyboard, and I don't use them enough to warrant buying anymore. I use my iPad sparingly. I may use it every once in a while when I'm away from home, but I'm not doing heavy stuff. And when I'm away from home, if I need to do something heavy, I just use my MacBook, so I'm fine.
I have mentioned before that I was waiting for a new iPad Pro, so I do think I am going to pick up the 11-inch, the 13-inch, even the previous 12.9. I was like, this is way too large for me.
It'll grow on you. I said the same exact thing until I got one, and
really?
I was like, it's a little heavy when you're trying to put it on your lap. And of course, the Magic Keyboard is not a laptop, so you have to place it on something. But when you place it on something, or when you take it off the keyboard, off the Magic Keyboard, and like for instance, I lay on my bed and use it, or I'm watching. I don't want to disturb my wife, and I don't want. Let me rephrase it. I don't want to monopolize the TV, right? So especially now, basketball season, NBA playoffs is on. I'm watching basketball a lot more, but I don't want to monopolize the TV. Man, having that big old screen and just laying on the bed and watching a basketball game, and then being able to minimize the screen and like do something else, like check email or scroll through social media, and the screen be big enough to where you can put the TV window, air quotes, in the corner,
where you can like split the screen and still be able to see and do something else,
or just have it like in smaller up in the corner while you're doing something else. That screen is like, oh, this real estate is like useful, right? So all that to say, I would go into the store and actually look at it, because that screen, it's inexpensive, it's cheaper for the 11-inch, but you use all that 12.9 or 30, in this case 13-inch screen. If you're getting the new one, you use all that space. It's not wasted space. I'll put it like that.
I use mostly my iPad for entertainment purposes, reading.
Well, most of using it for the show, right?
Yeah, I use it for the show, for my notes and that type of thing. But definitely doing that. I'll definitely probably pick up the pencil. I may pick up the keyboard. I don't do a lot of typing on my iPad, so I'm like, I don't know if I need that.
Does the Folio, the regular old iPad Folio, work for the 13-inch iPad Pro? Did they come out with a little?
I don't think they came out with a new Folio.
You know what I mean? The one that just folds up and covers.
Yeah, and like it has the magic screen where it kind of like covers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they did. No, I think it's just the same one they already. Yes, just the regular smart. Well, it says new.
Right. Well, so the iPad Pro is 13-inch versus the 12.9. I think
right. So it would need to be bigger. So it would have to be. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. So I don't know about the Magic Keyboard. Like I said, I don't use it really enough.
So let me ask. So are you going for the iPad Pro over the iPad Air?
Yes, I do want a Pro.
Okay.
I do want a Pro. Yeah, I've had regular iPads and the Airs before, but I like the Pro line better. So I'm gonna stick with the Pro.
All right.
So I'll probably pick that up Again, I didn't pre-order it because I was like, I don't have to worry about it selling out. I can, order anytime and get here or slide into a store and check it out. So, but yeah, I think I'm definitely going to get I said the 11-inch. Now you got me thinking about the 13-inch. I don't know, but
and they
definitely
do have
one of them.
Oh, and they do. I'm on Apple's website now, and they do have a Smart Folio for the iPad Pro 13-inch, as well as the Smart Folio for the iPad Pro 11-inch. So that's the one that just folds over the screen, and then you can kind of fold it on itself to make a stand. So
to make a stand. Yeah. And like that's the one I have now where it has the stand on it. Like I said, I don't really type that much on it because it's more for entertainment. I'm like doing anything hardcore, but thinking because I have I have the 16-inch M2 Pro, and that it's large. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't really want to lug it anywhere. So I don't know, we'll see. I'm open to kind of see what it is, but I'm definitely picking up something from this Apple event. I haven't bought really any Apple product since I think I got my phone, the 14 Pro, because it hasn't been
no AirPods.
No AirPods, no iPads. I already have a relatively new MacBook. So yeah, so this will be like my first time buying something in a minute. So I'm excited to get the Apple packaging and to unpackage it. So all right. Definitely picking that up. So that is going to wrap it up for the Lowdown. And I do believe, looking at our time, this is just basically going to be an all Apple event show. Next week, we'll come back with Second String and For the Culture. But I do want to make sure we give you the tech tip of the week. So we're going to definitely head on into the hookup. Brother Tech, what's our tech tip of the week?
All right. So gestures, we really don't use gestures on an iPhone, but I did want to highlight this 2-finger select all gesture. So think of like if you're checking your email and you need to select a bunch of emails and you want to mark them all as read, or you want to archive them or delete them. Instead of selecting the select option and then individually tapping each email, if on your mail you take 2 fingers and swipe down on all the messages, it'll automatically select all the messages that you highlighted, and then you can move them to a folder, mark them all as read, delete them. So this 2-finger gesture works if you're like trying to select multiple things. It mostly works in native apps. So you think of the Messages app, you think of the Mail app, you think of Notes, you think of Reminders, but any multiple selections, you can use this 2-finger gesture instead of, like I said, selecting the select button or select option and then individually clicking all of the items that you want to delete. So that's my tip for the week. If you want to save you some time and quickly select multiple items to delete or move or whatever, use the 2-finger swipe gesture.
Nice. Thanks for that tech tip. Again, that is going to wrap up the basically all Apple announcement show that we have this week. Brother Tech, where can the people find you?
Sure. You can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH.
And you can find me at Tech Savvy Diva pretty much everywhere you are on the internet. Again, to connect, to comment, to share, and to support our show, you can head on over to snobblewestcast.com to get all of the details. And with that, we will see you guys next week.
Peace.
Bye, everybody.